In the very center of a bustling metropolis, where the skyline kissed the clouds, and valet drivers knew names before keys were even handed over, stood the Rosewood Grand, a beacon of affluence, discretion, and prestige. It wasn't just a hotel, it was a status symbol. The moment you stepped through its grand revolving doors, you were met with a world untouched by the noise of the outside. Marble floors polished to a mirror's shine, the scent of imported jasmine in the air, and the soft chime of a grand piano floating from the bar lounge on the mezzanine level. Crystal chandeliers, imported from Italy, hung overhead like glittering constellations. Each one cost more than most people's cars. The walls bore artwork that seemed too quiet and expensive to name. Bellhops moved with synchronized precision, their steps silent but purposeful, like the heartbeat of the building itself. Guests didn't just stay here, they belonged here, or at least that was the idea. Everything about the Rosewood Grand whispered, "This is not for everyone." And guarding its entrance, almost symbolically, was the front desk. Behind that desk stood Claire Weston, a portrait of modern hospitality. Sleek bun, spotless blazer, subtle gold jewelry that hinted at class without daring to boast. At first glance, Claire seemed warm, professional, attentive, composed, but beneath the surface was a woman who knew exactly how to read a room, and more importantly, how to filter it. She had been with the Rosewood Grand for 6 years now, a small-town girl with big dreams, and a work ethic, sharpened by a decade of retail, hospitality, and the subtle politics of upper-class service. To the average guest, Claire was a paragon of discretion. To her co-workers, she was the standard. She took pride in being the first line of defense. She filtered the riffraff, kept the hotel's exclusivity untarnished, and Claire had a rule: first impressions were gospel. If you didn't walk in looking the part, she wouldn't treat you like you belonged. Simple. Her training didn't say that explicitly, but let's be honest, it didn't have to. She'd seen it all. Flashy influencers trying to shoot content without booking a room. Freeloaders who waltzed in pretending to meet someone, just to soak in the AC, or snag free coffee. She'd sniffed them out every time. So when a stranger walked in that morning, quietly, without fanfare, Claire's radar flickered to life. The doors parted, and in walked David Rowe. He didn't look like trouble. In fact, that was the problem. He didn't look like anything at all. Mid-40s, lean, calm. He wore jeans, not ripped, not designer, just clean, ironed denim, a light blue button-up shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his forearms. A leather messenger bag hung across his shoulder, the kind worn more for utility than show. No jewelry, no watch. There was nothing to anchor him to wealth, or to the world Claire thought she managed. He wasn't loud, didn't seem lost. He just walked in like he had something to do, something normal. But to Claire, it was off. Why? Because he didn't match. The guests at the Rosewood Grand didn't just arrive. They made an entrance. Loud colognes, brand name luggage, clicky heels, too much noise. But David was still, like he'd seen too much of the world to be impressed anymore. And that unsettled her more than a man shouting in the lobby ever could. Claire straightened, pulling her practice smile over her features. "Good morning, sir. May I help you with something?" Her tone was polite, crisp, but underneath it was a layer of caution. Not overt, not aggressive, just gently doubting. David returned her smile with something softer, almost amused. "I'm just here to check on a few things," he said. No last name. No reservation number. No assistant calling ahead. Claire's internal alarm started blaring. She took a half step forward, hands folding just above the counter like a hostess preparing to redirect someone to the correct entrance. "I'm sorry, do you have an appointment, or are you looking for someone?" David paused for a second. His eyes scanned the lobby, the elevators, the reception area, as if taking it all in. He nodded once. "Not exactly, but I won't be long." To Claire that sealed it. He doesn't belong here. The thoughts came fast, uninvited. Maybe he's a courier, or worse, casing the place. They come in all shapes now. She didn't mean for the thought to have racial overtones. She wouldn't have admitted it if you asked. But the truth was, when David walked in, her mind made a calculation. Black man, no visible status markers, alone, calm but vague. Something's not adding up. And in a hotel where adding up was everything, she acted accordingly. "I'm sorry, sir. This is a private property. Unless you're a guest, or have a scheduled meeting, I can't allow you to enter the common areas beyond the lobby." Her voice was still pleasant, but her eyes had changed. They were no longer curious. They were suspicious. David held her gaze for a beat longer than most would have. There was no anger in his eyes. No surprise, either, just a quiet knowing. "I understand," he said evenly. "But before you ask me to leave, are you sure you want to do this?" Claire blinked. That wasn't a courier line. That wasn't someone lost, or fishing for free coffee. That was confidence. Cool, dry, deliberate. But she couldn't backpedal now. The man didn't have a badge, or a name she could plug into the guest system. He hadn't flashed credentials, or even tried to be persuasive. Just, here to check on a few things. What did that even mean? So she doubled down. Her smile returned, tighter now. "Sir, I'm only doing my job. If you don't have credentials or a guest record, I'm afraid I'll have to ask you to wait outside." There it was, the polite no. David nodded slowly, eyes drifting past her, taking in the polished staircase behind the front desk, the lobby bar, the elevators, that hummed like secrets on strings. Then his gaze returned to her, calm, even amused. "Well," he said, "that's unfortunate." And without another word, he pulled out his phone. Claire's stomach did a small flip. Was he calling someone, taking a photo, reporting her? She stiffened. Then he looked at her, smiled gently, and said, "You'll want to tell your general manager that David Rowe is here. I'd prefer to speak with him directly." And with that he stepped back, not out of fear, but as if waiting. Claire faltered for the first time. She opened her mouth to protest, but her voice caught in her throat. David Rowe. Something about the name sparked in her memory, but not enough to connect the dots. So she did the only thing she could think of. She picked up the phone. The call rang through. "Front desk," she said into the receiver. "Yes, there's someone here. He says his name is David Rowe." "No, he didn't say what it's about." But she paused. On the other end, the voice changed. Sharp, alert, suddenly very interested. "What? You're sure? Claire, don't move. Tell him we're on our way. And whatever you do, don't ask him to leave again." Claire's fingers stiffened on the phone. She looked up. David was still waiting, watching her. And for the first time since he entered the building, she wasn't in control anymore. Claire Weston kept her smile polished, the kind of smile that could disarm even the most unruly business traveler. But right now, it was being tested. "I'm afraid I can't let you pass without a reservation," she said, keeping her voice gentle but firm, like velvet over a steel rail. David Rowe tilted his head, not in confusion, more like curiosity. "I'm not here to check in," he said, voice calm, almost amused. "I'm here to check on a few things." The line again, vague, unassuming, still not good enough. "I'll need more specifics," Claire insisted, her tone slightly clipped. "This is a secure property." David glanced around, a marble lobby gleaming under the light of imported chandeliers. A place where shoes were expected to cost more than rent, where even a misplaced cufflink could get someone side-eyed. "I'm aware," he said. "I helped design it." Claire didn't even blink. She reached for the phone under the counter, pressing the code for in-house security. Just a light touch. Protocol. Nothing dramatic. Yet her voice betrayed a whisper of unease. "Yes, we may need someone to assist at the front desk," she said softly, watching David from the corner of her eye. A few guests turned to look, their idle chatter replaced with hushed speculation. It was like someone had opened a door to a storm, not violent, but electric, unspoken. David remained still, waiting. Years ago, the world had a different look for David. Back then, it was the sound of clanging subway doors and echoing sirens that framed his mornings. He'd grown up on the south side of Detroit, in a two-bedroom apartment shared by 5 people, a leaky roof, and the scent of too much hope and not enough insulation. He joined the military, not because it was noble, but because it was an exit from rusted fences, from duct-taped sneakers, from dreams that came second to bills. Afghanistan taught him silence, structure, strategy. It also taught him the value of observing before reacting, a skill that would later build his fortune. After his service, he studied architecture while driving delivery trucks at night. People called it madness. He called it momentum. He fell in love with design. But more than that, he fell in love with how people felt in a space. A single inn, in Vermont, That was the seed. He poured his heart into the details. The curve of a staircase, the scent of the lobby, the way natural light could soften even the hardest of hearts. Word spread. Guests returned. Investors noticed. In 10 years, that single inn bloomed into a boutique hotel chain, known for elegance with soul, and the hotel Claire stood guard at now. That was the flagship. David Rowe wasn't just a guest, he was the owner. The click of modest heels echoed from the hallway as assistant manager Brianna emerged. She was young, maybe late 20s, carrying the pleasant nerves of someone still memorizing the employee handbook. "Claire," she asked, brows raised. "Everything okay?" Claire turned slightly, keeping one eye on David. "This gentleman has no reservation, and is refusing to leave." Brianna looked at David, really looked. There was something odd, not wrong, just inconsistent with Claire's description. David offered a gentle smile. "I asked to speak with management. I've been told you're unavailable." Brianna hesitated, the calm in his eyes, the way he stood, like he belonged, even if no one invited him. Claire's jaw tensed. "He's being vague," she added quickly, "and he's blocking the desk." David wasn't blocking anything. In fact, he had subtly stepped aside the moment Brianna walked up, just enough to give her space, but not enough to retreat. A move most people wouldn't notice, except Brianna did. The elevator doors pinged open across the lobby, and out stepped a tall silver-haired woman in a tailored navy pantsuit. Veronica Grant, a returning VIP guest, known for her art collection, sharp wit, and the kind of presence that made PR interns tremble. She spotted David instantly. "David," her voice cut through the awkward air like piano keys breaking silence. "Well, if it isn't the man who made my favorite hotel what it is." Claire froze. Brianna blinked. David chuckled softly, and extended a hand. "Veronica, you're back." "You bet I am. Wouldn't dream of staying anywhere else." Claire spoke first, tone hesitant. "You know each other." Veronica turned, her diamond earrings catching the chandelier's light. "Know him, darling. This man saved the brand." Claire's face didn't fall, but it cracked, just a hairline fracture, noticeable only if you knew where to look. David's smile grew just slightly. "Would you believe I still don't have a key card?" And there it was, the tension shifting, not gone, but changing shape. How many times have we missed greatness, because it didn't look like what we expected? It started small, a whisper from concierge to bellhop, a question passed like a game of telephone from the valet to housekeeping. "Did you hear who that is?" "Wait, him? No way." The story twisted and stretched with each retelling. Some said he was the real owner, others said he was undercover. A few joked he was a secret inspector sent by corporate. Brianna pulled Claire aside by the espresso machine in the back office. "Are you sure?" she asked gently. "You didn't recognize him at all?" Claire stood tall. "I acted by the book. He didn't identify himself. I protected the property. But what if he is who they say he is?" Claire's eyes narrowed, her voice quiet but fierce. "Then why not say so up front?" "Because maybe people like David Rowe don't announce themselves. Maybe the ones with real power don't need to shout." But Claire didn't say that. She just folded her arms, standing behind policy like a wall. What no one saw, what Claire never allowed anyone to see, was the collection notice in her purse. The final one, red stamped, "Final warning." Or the late night calls from her sister needing help with rent. Or the way her shoulders slumped after every shift, the weight of appearances pressing her down like gravity set to extra. Claire had dealt with men like David before, or so she thought. Men who strolled in like they owned the place, who barked at staff, who assumed luxury was their birthright. She'd been tricked once, by a man who posed as a foreign diplomat, complete with fake documents and arrogance to match. She'd been scolded by upper management for letting him slip through. Ever since, she'd been vigilant. No more mistakes, no more letting people in just because they smiled with confidence. So when David arrived, cool and cryptic, Claire's alarm bells rang. He reminded her of someone who had once embarrassed her professionally, of someone who had cost her dignity. So she pushed back, harder than she might have, had her job felt secure, had her life felt less like a balancing act on a wire pulled tight by circumstance. Because people don't always punch down out of cruelty. Sometimes, they punch down because it's the only direction they still feel in control. What will David do next? Will Claire's assumptions shatter under the weight of truth?
And how do we repair trust once it's fractured in front of an audience? The grand doors at the far end of the lobby open with a soft hiss, just as the afternoon sun slices across the marble floor. The hotel general manager, Mr. Lawton, enters, still straightening his tie from a city chamber luncheon, polished shoes, a navy blazer, and a practiced smile, until his eyes land on the scene at reception. His expression shifts instantly. Recognition, respect. He doesn't hesitate.
"Mr. Rowe," he exclaims, striding across the lobby. "Welcome back, sir." The entire lobby seems to fall into suspended animation. Claire, still behind the desk, freezes mid-keystroke. Brianna, halfway through a question, goes rigid. The doorman subtly stands straighter. A bellhop halts mid-step. Mr. Lawton approaches David with an extended hand, not just as a superior greets a VIP, but the way a student greets a mentor. "Had I known you were coming in today, we'd have had the penthouse prepped, and a bottle of cuvee chilling," he adds, voice lined with reverence. David smiles lightly, his tone warm. "Didn't want to make a fuss. Just figured I'd drop in and see how the place was doing." Mr. Lawton looks around at the frozen staff, brows drawing tight. "Is everything all right here?" he asks carefully, sensing the tension. Claire's voice cracks. I didn't know." David cuts in, calm, quiet. "Don't worry, we were just getting to know each other." The silence returns. All eyes turn to Claire, her posture shrinking as realization tightens like a noose. I didn't know who you were," she murmurs. David doesn't flinch. "That's the thing, Claire," he says. "You never asked." He turns slightly, addressing not just her, but everyone in earshot. "You saw a man in worn boots and a weathered jacket. You assumed." He walks toward the reception counter, slowly, his voice steady but firm. "Do you know how many people like me walk through these doors and get turned away? Because they don't look the part, don't sound refined enough." A few of the nearby guests glance down at their drinks. One older couple watching from a lounge table exchange a meaningful look. A server clutches her order pad tighter. "This hotel," David continues, tapping the granite counter gently, "was designed to make everyone feel like they belonged here, not just those who dress the part." Claire opens her mouth, but no words come. Her face, once composed and firm, now trembles with unease. Her eyes flick toward Brianna, who avoids her gaze. "Respect," David finishes, "isn't something we measure by appearances. It's something we give, until it's lost." "Mr. Lawton," David turns, "would you mind gathering the staff?" The manager nods. "Of course, sir." Within minutes, staff file in from all directions: housekeeping, bellhops, front desk, concierge, kitchen assistants, in aprons and chef coats, all taking cautious steps into the lobby, sensing something important was unfolding. Guests linger nearby, sensing the weight of what's to come. David steps forward. No podium, no microphone, just presence. "I started my first hotel with 4 rooms and a busted water heater," he begins. "I painted the walls myself, served coffee in chipped mugs. I cleaned the sheets when housekeeping couldn't show." He pauses, scanning the faces before him. "I wore the same boots I'm wearing now." Soft laughter ripples through the staff, tentative, nervous. David smiles faintly. "We built something special here, not because of thread count or chandeliers, but because we believed luxury isn't a look. It's how someone feels when they walk through our doors." He turns toward the front desk. "And how we make them feel." He takes a breath. "This morning I wasn't greeted. I wasn't asked if I needed help. I was judged." Claire shifts uncomfortably. David continues. "Now I'm not here to reprimand. I'm here to remind." He lifts a hand, gesturing around. "This lobby, it's a stage. Every one of you. You set the tone for the experience. And that starts with kindness, with humility, with assuming the best in others." Silence falls again, deeper this time. Some nod slowly, others glance toward Claire, their expressions mixed. Shock, sympathy, quiet judgment. "Luxury," David finishes, voice quiet now, "isn't reserved for those who look like they belong. It's offered, freely, without question." When the staff begin to disperse, murmuring softly among themselves, Claire remains behind the desk, rooted in place. David turns, catching her eye. "I'm sorry," she blurts. The words are thin, brittle. David holds her gaze. I believe you. She swallows, blinking back tears. I didn't mean. He nods. I know, but intent doesn't erase impact. She looks down. I thought I was protecting the hotel. We've had people try to sneak in, pretend to be someone they're not. He steps closer, gently but firmly. And I built this place so no one would ever have to pretend to be someone else. Claire's voice cracks. Am I going to be fired? David's answer is not what she expects. You have a decision to make, he says softly. Not about your job, about who you want to be, moving forward. He leaves her with that. No final judgment, no loud words, no paperwork handed over. Just a mirror, held up in a moment of truth. As David walks away, the lobby watches, breath caught in collective pause. He doesn't look back. He doesn't need to. He didn't fire her. He didn't even raise his voice. But something in Claire broke that day, and she knew she'd never be the same. The next morning, Claire didn't report to the front desk. Her nameplate was removed quietly, her shifts reassigned. But it wasn't a termination, it was a pause, one that she requested herself. She needed to breathe, to reckon. She didn't vanish into shame or defensiveness. Instead, she sought help, spoke to a therapist, opened old emotional closets that had long been locked shut. Poverty, resentment, her father's constant reminder that people like us will always be looked down on. She'd internalized it all. Her armor had been built from survival, but it was time to dismantle it. She revisited every encounter in her career with a new lens, and realized how many moments she'd let her fear speak louder than her compassion. Claire wasn't a villain, but she had been blind, and she knew now. Ignorance isn't neutral, it's complicit. Weeks passed. She kept a journal, read books on class, race, unconscious bias, attended workshops, not because anyone told her to, but because the mirror David held up had cracked something open inside. On Saturdays, she began volunteering at a local non-profit that helped formerly incarcerated women re-enter the workforce. She listened to their stories, she saw their resilience, and she wondered how many of them might have walked into her hotel and been dismissed. It humbled her. She wasn't just learning, she was unlearning. Meanwhile, the hotel, David's crown jewel, began to shine in ways marble and gold leaf never could. Within days of the lobby incident, David made calls, not to punish, but to transform. He brought in consultants specializing in inclusive hospitality. Sensitivity training sessions were introduced across all departments, not once, but as part of ongoing education. Hiring protocols changed. Interviews were redesigned to reduce bias. Outreach efforts expanded to bring in talent from underserved communities. The culture shifted. It wasn't perfect, but it was intentional. The staff, at first wary, began to engage. Conversations bloomed in break rooms. Empathy took root, tensions faded. And the results? Guest satisfaction soared. Online reviews noted not just the sleek architecture, or the artisanal breakfasts, but the kindness, the warmth, the way someone in a hoodie could check in and be treated like royalty. Turnover rates dropped. Employees who once clocked in just for a paycheck now took pride in the brand's mission. The hotel became more than a place to sleep. It became a place that saw people. One evening, in the private lounge reserved for executive meetings, David sat with his inner circle, Lawton, Brianna, and 2 board members. They sipped bourbon. A soft jazz track played in the background. You handled that day with class, one board member said. Most CEOs would have gone nuclear. David shook his head. This wasn't about optics. He leaned back in his chair, gaze distant but focused. What happened in that lobby was painful, but necessary, he said. We can't fix what we won't face. He wasn't bitter. He wasn't angry. If anything, he looked grounded. People talk about rising above others, he continued. But I think we're meant to rise with them. Otherwise, what's the point? There was a long pause. Even Mr. Lawton, rarely sentimental, gave a nod of quiet agreement. David tapped his glass against the table gently. This place isn't just my legacy. It's a promise that everyone, no matter what they wear, where they're from, or how they speak, deserves a moment of dignity. Months later, Claire returned to the hotel. Not as a guest, not to reclaim her old position, but with something new in hand, an application. She'd spent the last few months retraining, taking certification courses in HR and workplace equity. She didn't want to be a face at a desk anymore. She wanted to be part of shaping the system. She wanted to make sure no one else fell through the cracks she now saw so clearly. Her application was submitted anonymously, per new protocol, but when it landed on David's desk, he recognized the name immediately. He didn't hesitate. He didn't call for an interview. He didn't ask for a resume review. He simply wrote a short note on the corner of the file before forwarding it to HR. Everyone deserves a second look. Dr. Claire was hired within the week. Her new role, Director of Inclusion and Employee Experience. She started with small things, rewriting onboarding manuals, creating listening circles, offering one-on-one check-ins. But the impact was seismic. One by one, employees, from line cooks to housekeeping to executive assistants, shared that they felt seen for the first time. Not just employees, human beings. Have you ever been judged, or judged someone too soon? What changed when you looked again? Share your story below. Let's build a better world, one conversation at a time. The lobby was just as grand as ever. The polished floors gleamed in the sunlight, pouring through the towering glass atrium. A delicate arrangement of orchids graced the welcome desk, and soft piano music drifted through hidden speakers. But beneath the elegance, something deeper pulsed, something real. David Rowe stood by the staircase, leaning slightly on the railing, watching the rhythm of the place he built. A young receptionist, no older than 24, was kneeling beside a little boy, handing him a chocolate coin wrapped in gold foil. The boy grinned up at her, while his parents, a multiracial couple, wearing jeans and worn backpacks, checked in. There were no second glances, no veiled suspicion, only ease, only welcome. The receptionist beamed, genuinely. "Enjoy your stay with us," she said, handing over their room keys like she was passing along a gift. David smiled. He hadn't seen that family before. But in their arrival, he saw a reflection of everything he had worked toward, and everything the hotel had become. Behind him, a junior staffer stepped up, holding a tablet, nervous, eager. "Excuse me, Mr. Rowe," she said. "I've always wanted to ask, how did you come up with the hotel's motto?" David turned to her, his eyes crinkled with age, but they still held that steady fire. He placed a hand gently on the railing, and looked out across the lobby again, watching as a bellhop offered a shy teenager a compliment on her purple hair. He spoke quietly, but clearly, "Because I've lived it. I know what it feels like to be looked past, to be measured by clothes, by accent, by assumptions. Real luxury isn't about chandeliers or thread counts. It's about how we make people feel. It's seeing people, not for who we expect them to be, but for who they really are." The staffer nodded slowly. Something in her posture softened. She got it. David didn't say more. He didn't need to. A child's laugh echoed from the elevator. Somewhere nearby, a guest offered a kind thank you to a janitor. And in the distance, Claire, now head of HR, was leading a workshop with new hires, her tone passionate, her eyes lit with purpose. The hotel had become what he dreamed of, and more. Not a palace of opulence, but a haven of recognition. A place where dignity wasn't reserved for the few, but woven into every check-in, every smile, every second chance. And as David turned to walk toward the cafe, someone held the door for him, a small gesture, but full of grace. He nodded in gratitude, heart full. The culture had changed, and it would continue, long after he was gone.